How y'all doing? Um, I had what I think comes to close to an epiphanal moment today. And I'm not a chick that typically has epiphanies, but I had one that came close to it. I'm putting together a dollhouse, and the point of putting together the dollhouse was for me to concentrate on something concrete so I could, you know, I'm not really working now, lost my husband, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out like who I am and what I'm trying to do. So instead of sitting there and worrying, I'm sitting there putting together a dollhouse. And this morning, yesterday I had solved a problem. This morning, I realized the solve was not a solve. And as your girl picked up the house, looking to chuck it across the room, I was like, wait a minute, hang on. I haven't wanted to chuck anything across the room or do anything like that since the day after I lost my husband when I took a bat to the other dollhouse I had. That was huge. But I thought that was a moment that was peculiar to that event. Uh, and when I got ready to chuck the house this morning, I realized that it's not. It was not an event that was attached to me wanting to destroy something was not an event attached to that loss. It was in that moment, but that's a chick I used to be on the regular. Was the chick that was throwing stuff, the chick that was having having an outburst and an upset and angst and anxiety. And I've always thought to myself, if you know where you're weak, if you know what's wrong with you, you'll be fine because you can always adjust for the critical efforts that you cannot, uh, the critical errors that you could make if you don't pay attention to the places where you are weak. And I got so committed to the proposition of knowing where I'm weak that I wrote it down in two of the books that I wrote. One was My Mother's Rules, which I wrote oh, in 2000 something, like 757, something like this, and Dear Sonali, which is one I wrote in 2019. And I had two sections about what's wrong with me. And I read them both, and they're similar but different, demonstrating growth. So I was rereading them this morning to figure out what it is I needed to do next because I knew that wanting to throw that house across the room onto the wall was old Lynn Toler, you know, peeking up from behind the blinds trying to mess up my situation. And I couldn't understand within the context of what was wrong with me, A, and what was wrong with me, B, because that's what I call my list, A and B. What's wrong with me, A, and what's wrong with me, B. I was trying to create a list, what's wrong with me, C, but all the parameters had changed. I didn't become less prone to outbursts. I had a silencer. I had a comforter. I had I had something to to stop that. So I hadn't become as calm as I thought I had. I had simply rested comfortably in the fact that I knew Eric knew where the lines were and he wasn't going to let me cross none of them if it was going to cause him trouble. And not only that, he would push me all the way to a line because I was always afraid to go. But now I'm standing at that line trying to figure out what the heck to do. Am I at a point where he would have pushed me further, or am I at a point where he would have pulled me back? And I haven't had to worry about that in 34 years. And that's when I realized I broke another one of my mother's rules, which was I bought this book, My Mother's Rules. She always thought it was a stupid thing to do. Every time I wrote her and called her and asked her for a story for the book, and she says, "You still writing that stupid book?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "I don't know why you do that. Nobody wants to know what I know what I think." And I said, "I do, and I'm so glad I did because now that she's not here anymore, I can ask her questions. Just like, Mommy, what should I do about this? What should I do about that?" And there was one thing, one chapter in here where uh, I was going through postpartum depression, didn't know it, and I was low and slow. And I'm prone to depression anyway. You know, my gynecologist was calling the house talking about how you feeling, how you doing. You know, the doctor just calls. You know, you were looking. I said, "I'm fine. Why?" So last time I saw you, I didn't like your lack of affect. And I said, "Well, what would you like my affect to be?" "Oh, I was in it, on it, and over it, and all kinds about it." Uh, but my mother, I talked to my mother. She says, "I don't know quite what's wrong with you, but let me tell you what, while you're having this problem, you got to keep your eye on the point of the whole thing. And the point of the whole thing is to make sure that your children okay, and they're protected from all harm. Even if that harm is coming from you, you got to wake up every morning and ask yourself why you feel the way you do, and how will that affect how you deal with your children. You can't just accept what I say. Now you've got to repeat it to yourself every morning because you're going through something. We don't know what it is, but at no time do you have the right to allow that to land on your children. You have to step back and check your program. You have to say, wait, 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 wait. Like, for instance, I had to check my program about 7 months ago because my big thing was to do a whole lot of work in the morning so I could go to bed as soon as I could so I wouldn't have to feel any sad any longer than I'd have to. You wondering what's going on over here? I got an entire, you know, situation happening. But anyway, and that was the point of the whole thing. And then I didn't realize until 6 months ago that, staying up past 7 o'clock isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. So I had to readjust the point of the whole thing. So while I was getting ready to check this thing over to that, while I had to ask myself, what's wrong with your program that you're running? And the thing is, when I first got widowed, I was seeing everything through a widow lens. Like, everything I saw, I would think, now what would he think about that? Because I don't want to miss nothing. I didn't want to, and now that I don't feel like I happen to be a widow, but I'm not a widow all day long, and I'm doing things, and I look up and I realize I'm no longer in that padded room. I'm outside on the street. And I'm not sure if I'm fully clothed. So I am going to have to go backwards and check my program because even what I was doing from 2005, what's wrong with me, to 2019, that was wrong with me, to 2025, what's wrong with me, that is not the sole inquiry I have to make. I have to figure out, almost like with my mother's rules, kind of like what he was giving me in terms of both comfort care and freedom and push and drive, I now have to do for myself. Ain't that about a right? But anyway, I figured it out. And that's where I am now. And I'm glad I figured it out. So our question to you is, do you know what's wrong with you, and when's the last time you checked your program? Are you still doing what you need to do to get where you want to go? Are you still trying to do what you needed to do to get where you already were and didn't stop and say, well, now that I'm here, I got to go do something else. You got to check your program. Then the last thing I'm going to do is this. On Instagram, I showed a picture of me with my sister-in-law and yeah, ignore the dogs. With my sister-in-law. It's hot in here. With my sister-in-law in an odd position, and everybody want to know how I got into that position. Now I can't, frankly, don't specifically remember what it was, but I think it, wait a minute now. I think it was this. So that's how I got into it. I sat down, wrapped my arm around my leg, put my leg to my head. That's what I did. And I ain't lying. At 65, I'm proud I can still do that nonsense. It ain't a skill that's gonna get me anywhere, but hey, if my mic was better, you could have heard my knees crack when I did that. Y'all have a good day. I intend to.